Well, hello everyone. Want to welcome you back to Leadership Corner. We're picking up the conversation again as we're unpacking what disciple making looks like and looking at it from so many different aspects. And today we pick up the conversation about what it looks like to start in a real simple spot. You know, my guys and I, we were meeting one time and we were going through the book called Master Plan of Evangelism. And this book is just incredible. I encourage you to check it out if you haven't. And as we were going through it, we got to a point towards the end where it was really challenging us on this question of who is it that we're discipling? You know, in other weeks we've talked about it, about who is our Timothy. But when that question was asked, we all kind of paused and looked at each other. And there was sort of an awkward silence around the room because we weren't quite sure how to answer the question. As much as we all longed to have somebody to name that we could be discipling in and intentionally investing in, no one was coming to mind right away. But then out of nowhere, it was like something just sort of slipped out of my mouth about disciple making. And I looked at the guys and what came out was, you know guys, the reality is that discipleship starts in the home. And so maybe we should start by asking the question, how are we doing at discipling our wives? How are we doing at discipling our kids? And one of the guys in the group, maybe more of them, but at least one, I could see sort of this aha moment that came across his eyes as he thought like, wow, I don't even have to leave my house and I can start this whole disciple making journey right here, right now. And that was sort of a watershed moment for us to be thinking differently about how this whole thing begins. You know, there's story after story of super famous pastors of old who did amazing feats in terms of evangelism, were great pastors and great teachers, and led these huge ministries. But when it came down to their family life, it was a completely different story. Now, you know, it'd be really easy just to point the finger at pastors since they were, back then, and still are, held to a higher standard as people who are leading congregations. But if we pull back and look at our own lives, it's true that we all can fall prey to the fulfillment that we get from the places that we work, and how all those other places can take the best of our energy and of our time. You know, my buddy Tong, he says something quite often that rings in the back of my head. He says, you know, Mario, there's never been a person that's been sitting on their deathbed that said, man, I wish I would have spent more time at work instead of spending more time with my kids. I mean, how true is that, right? Keeping that eternal perspective makes all the difference. And an author and pastor, Jim Putman, says it this way. He writes, not every Christian has the gift of leadership, but every believer is supposed to make disciples. And the most important place to focus is in our homes. Now, of course, we can't make our kids follow Jesus, but there's definitely things that we can do to make that much more of a possibility. And on the same token, there are things that we can do that will really make it much more difficult. And so it does require for us to be intentional, even in our homes. So I say to you the same thing I say to the guys in the group that night. Discipleship starts in the home. If you have kids at home, put an intentional plan in place on how you're going to disciple them. Will you tell them a story that will help them grow in their relationship with Jesus? Will you do some fun activities outside? Will you just look for moments in which you're able to share about the love of Jesus, to represent him well? One of the things I think is so true is that when we're parenting well, our kids will get a glimpse of the strength of who Jesus is and the mercy of who God is in such a way that when they transition from seeing us to come in to understand who God is, it's a seamless transition. I know that's a really lofty goal, but I think it's one worth striving for. If you need more ideas on how to disciple kids, I tell you, we have one of the best resources here at Gateway Fellowship. Pastor Shelley Cole, she is amazing, not just with working with kids, but working with parents on how to disciple kids. And the same thing is true with youth. If you want to know how to disciple your youth well, I encourage you, have a conversation with Pastor Josiah. If you haven't met him yet, you can check out our website and you can learn more about him there. But I've had conversations with both of these guys and they have coached me up along the way about how I can disciple my kids in a way that they will honor the Lord. I think it'll be well worth your time. But you know, maybe you don't have kids. Or maybe your kids have grown up and they've moved out, and so you're trying to figure out what to do about that. Well, if that's where you are, then I encourage you to check out last week's episode because I unpacked that a little bit on what it means to not live with an empty nest. So I encourage you to check that out. I'll put that in the link below. But really, I just want to encourage all of us, regardless of where we are, to think about just the most central relationships that we have and how we can turn those into discipling moments and see our homes start to follow Jesus, and beyond that, continue to spread to our neighbors, our neighborhoods, and really to see the whole kingdom of God all over the earth. It starts with us It starts in our homes. Thanks for spending some time with me just to think about some of these thoughts on disciple making. And until next time we get together, I pray that you have a great week. God bless. If you need more ideas, so that's what it is. If you need more ideas, seriously?